Augmented human beings in a decadent future. This trope has been one of the top favorite elements among creators when it comes to making dystopian films and stories. The very notion of perfecting the human body in order to eliminate one's physical and intellectual limitations is astounding. It speaks volumes of a species that is obsessed with flawlessness and excellence, so that the ideal human being is capable of achieving greatness with their innate potential. Such is the idea that underlies the rough and rugged terrain of Megalobox. Set in a futuristic world where citizenship and power determine one's esteem, this anime series encompasses the infamous Megalonia, a renowned boxing tournament featuring bloodthirsty boxers armed with the most advanced models of gear technology. However, in this post-apocalyptic setting, one man chooses to drop the gears and gadgets to thrive on the thrills of violence and action, and that is none other than the protagonist himself, aka Junk Dog. Going against the tide of his times, Junk Dog decides to go for the road not taken, with risky twists and turns in his journey to become the greatest boxer ever. So, in this video, we will be delving into the anatomy of Junk Dog as we learn about his origin story, his prowess as a boxer, and why he chose to go gearless in one of the most technologically advanced sporting events across the planet. Who is Junk Dog? What did he do for a living? Before we get into the nitty-gritty of his character, you might be wondering what this show is all about. Well, the anime series Megalobox pays homage to the classic manga Ashita no Joe. In fact, the character of Junk Dog is loosely based on the titular protagonist of Ashita no Joe. Director Yo Maruyama drew inspiration from real-life boxers to shape Junk Dog's fighting style. Much like Joe, Junk Dog's narrative is a tribute to the iconic rivalry seen in Yuri's original character Rikishi. The development team engaged in extensive discussions regarding Joe's more melancholic personality when crafting the sequel, with the goal of giving him a compelling character arc. So with this, let's come to the first major point of our video, the identity of Junk Dog. In case you're wondering, yes, Junk Dog is actually a name and not a title per se. It is the initial name by which the viewers get acquainted with a young athletic boxer with a big mass of disheveled hair. There is very little information regarding his past, yet the only concrete detail we get from Season 1 is that Junk Dog is not an official citizen in the country. Just like the other thousands of people who belong to the lower socioeconomic strata of the society, in fact, the name Junk Dog is not even his real name. His natal name is still unknown as far as the canon is concerned. When it comes to his profession, he practices boxing under the guidance of Coach Nanbu, who signs up the protagonist to take part in boxing matches in the slums. But it does not end here. Coach Nanbu would always instruct Junk Dog to lose fights purposefully so that he could make money, much to the frustration of the young boxer who wanted to get over his reputation as a punching bag. However, he did not spend his entire life in the ring. Rather, prior to his boxing career, it is speculated from his attire that Junk Dog was once a part of the military. It's worth noting that the 3-layered arrow badge on Joe's jacket typically signifies a sergeant's rank in the military. It does seem to suggest that either Joe or someone close to him provided him with a jacket and held a sergeant's position. While Joe's pre-existing scars could hint at a previous career in the military, it is important to remember that Tatsumi Aragaki, Nanbu's previous boxing protege, left the army a decade ago. If the conflict Aragaki was involved in, which resulted in his handicap, continued or concluded relatively recently, it is quite conceivable that Junk Dog held the rank of sergeant. Hence, taking into consideration these possibilities, it can be implied that Junk Dog's boxing career began a few years before the events of Season 1 took place. So with that being said, let's move on to the segment about Junk Dog as a boxer. How does Joe get into megaloboxing? Is he a bad fighter? In the world of Megalobox, where people determine power solely on the basis of strength, Junk Dog 2 endeavors to be the strongest. But there lies a glaring difference. In this grand tussle for life and reputation, most boxers want to boast their physical capabilities by sporting the shiniest gear they own. Junk Dog, on the other hand, does not really have the need to show off. Rather, he lives off the sheer adrenaline rush that entails hand-to-hand combat inside the ring. More importantly, Junk Dog challenges himself to become better and stronger by testing his own limits, all of which eventually culminate in him dropping the gears once and for all. As a boxer, to come up with a left hook at the right moment of a round and never back down from a fight, these are the few nuances that help him get one step closer to his own dream to defeat Yuri, the defending champion of Megalonia. So how did he even stumble upon the world of boxing and, most importantly, Megalonia itself? Like his past, Junk Dog's first encounter with Nanbu is not revealed canonically, yet as per the events of of Aragaki's past, it can be inferred that Nanbu went bankrupt and lost everything immediately after his former student came back from the war. Shown in Season 1 of Megalobox, a physically disabled Aragaki is shown maneuvering his wheelchair towards Nanbu's gym, which remains desolate and dilapidated. From here on, it can be implied that Nanbu had no other choice but to find another boxer for himself so that he could take part in the illegal betting circles in the underground boxing matches that he can make ends meet. Perhaps this is how Junk Dog came into contact with Nanbu and eventually became one of his best students. Now, to answer the second question of this segment, well, we gotta say he is not a bad fighter at all. Rather, the odds were kind of against his favor. And there are 2 points to justify the same. One, Nanbu would have the underground matches rigged in a way that he would win money from the opponent's side only when Junk Dog forfeited the match by simply taking the blows and going down in the ring. This is somewhat similar to the boxing experiences of Jack Murdoch, the father of Matt Murdock, aka the infamous Daredevil. The second point is the fact that Junk Dog never got decent gear to don and fight in the ring. Given the impoverished lives they lead, it was a luxury to have light and smart gear to fight with in a boxing match, which was just a pipe dream for the teacher and his student. So, forfeiting matches as part of bets is not really a new concept. What is noteworthy, however, is the unconventional boxing style that Junk Dog was able to incorporate in every single fight that he took part in. This also includes the phenomenal showdown between him and his arch-nemesis Yuri, aptly described by Nanbu as the fight between two scarred animals. The sheer prowess with which a gearless Junk Dog Joe was able to go toe-to-toe against the likes of Yuri does convey the huge influence the real sport of boxing has had in the creation of the series. As we mentioned earlier, Megalobox is indeed heavily inspired by the various unforgettable moments witnessed in boxing in the real world. So let's learn about Joe's anatomy. What makes Joe a perfect specimen for boxing? You might have noticed that we kept referring to the protagonist as Junk Dog until now, when we actually called him by the name Joe just a moment ago. As shown in Season 1 of Megalobox, Joe was the name that Junk Dog chose for himself while his fake citizenship documents were being issued. Hence, this new name gradually became a part of his stage name in Megalonia, replacing it with a much hyped Gearless Joe. So what distinguishes him from the rest of the boxers, besides the fact that he does not wear a gear? Let's find out. Joe stands tall among his peers, possessing a striking appearance. He boasts a strong, lean, yet well-built physique and a dark olive complexion that complements his distinctive features. His trademark black hair and thick eyebrows gave him an unforgettable look. Joe's journey into the world of competitive boxing has left its mark on him, quite literally. He bears a horizontal scar on his right jaw which extends across his cheek, acquired during one of his intense matches. Additionally, there's another matching scar on his left cheek. On his body, there are several kinds of scars, each which denotes the harsh life he has been leading as a boxer participating in underground matches. Despite his imposing physicality and the presence of such scars, Joe's height, standing at 5 feet and 11 inches, often surprises onlookers. When he steps into the ring to face his opponents in the Megalonia tournament, his stature can be deceptively underestimated. And what does create the impression of him being weaker than his opponents? An assumption which is quite fatal to whoever stands in front of Gearless Joe. He had been subjected to unimaginable heights of pain whenever he had to concede to his opponents in the underground boxing matches. With each punch he could take in the ring, Joe's endurance levels boosted significantly to the extent that he could still stand on his 2 feet after being beaten badly by a stronger opponent. In short, Joe never required the gear in the first place because the ones he got were outdated and he never got the scope to use them properly as a fighter. Instead, he had to rely solely on his stamina, strength, and endurance to outlast every single opponent he had to face in the ring. No wonder Nanbu would keep pleading with him to stay down towards the end of every match in the slums, because his coach was certain of one thing, that Joe had it in him to keep the fight going until he emerged victorious. His tenacity and persistence therefore constitute a major part of his person as a fighter who is not quite technically sound but can surely make the best moves at the right moments in a match. Wait, did we forget something? Why does Joe fight without a gear in the Megalonia tournament? Oops, apologies for not explaining all this earlier in this video. Yeah, we babbled quite a lot about gears and gear technology without actually talking about its specificity, so we will take this moment to talk about it in detail. So, the gear can be defined as a kind of technology that is meant to augment the user's abilities. It consists of a metallic exoskeleton that often expands from the pivot to the user's wrists, followed by a pair of boxing gloves. The more advanced models of gear technology often span the lower body of the user, such as Yuri's gear, which was designed by Shirato Concern, the company that hosts the Megalonia as well as endorses the champion boxer. Led by Yukiko Shirato, this company is in fact a pioneer of gear technology and the Megalobox universe. Shirato Concern aims to seek the military's attention to be able to make profits by creating these gears in bulk. To own such expensive equipment would require ample financial resources to purchase this piece of technology and use it diligently in a tournament like Megalonia. So why did Junk Dog turn into Gearless Joe to participate in the event? Well, this answer has 2 points in particular. Testing his physical prowess. As we reiterate, Joe always loves to challenge himself by coming up with ways to constrain his physical capabilities to bring out the best of his potential, and the best way to make it happen is by going gearless in a tournament where gear technology is part and parcel of every fighter's inventory. Ever since he met Yuri for the first time in Season 1, Joe has seemingly become obsessed with the notion of establishing himself as the best fighter in the world by battling against the champion user of gear technology. At the same time, Joe has his intrinsic motivation at work too. He essentially wants to fight without gears in order to reach his maximum potential, and he believes it is possible by solely depending on his instinct and reflexes. To be precise, Joe prefers to rely on his natural strength rather than being maneuvered to propel punches with machinery. Hitting buzz amongst boxing fans. This was something that both Nanbu and Joe agreed on. Just like in most tournaments, players often require sponsorships so that they can afford the minimum necessities to sustain the player throughout the event. Besides money, it also includes material resources that would enable the player and his team to function more efficiently. At the same time, to make it to the top 4 of Megalonia, a player must compete with fighters who are ranked higher than him to improve his odds. So for the sake of garnering popularity from day one itself, Joe and his coach decided to come up with a better stage name that would not only attract sponsors but also encourage competitors to fight against him. Having won his first match against the 185th ranked boxer Shark Samajima, Joe and his team Nowhere immediately catapulted into fame, all because of the fact that Joe decided to let go of the gear. Unfortunately, Joe's successful campaign in Season 1 takes a sudden dark turn in the next season where we see an entirely different personality from Junk Dog. What is most shocking, however, is Joe resorting to gear technology in this segment of his life story. So what exactly happened to the gearless fighter who defeated Yuri in Megalonia? What makes Joe use a gear in Season 2 of Megalonia? How does it change his fighting style? In 2021, the second season of Megalobox, subtitled Nomad, was released across the globe. Much to the surprise of the fans, the protagonist's return was characterized by Joe falling prey to the vicious cycle of drug addiction and grappling in the dark to find its ways out of it. The plot of Nomad is set about 5 years after the incidents that takes place in Season 1. He is seen moving from place to place, carrying his gear and taking part in various underground boxing matches to earn enough money to fuel his painkiller addiction. It is quite remarkable to see that the makers decided to turn the story of Joe's boxing career towards the path of drug abuse, one of the most prevalent occurrences in real-world sporting events. Every year, a doping scandal or two would make it to the front page with athletes falling victim to drug problems due to the demanding nature of their sport. Yet Nomad does a good job at exploring the reason why Joe took such a drastic measure when he could have been a thriving Megalonia champion. Albeit narrated briefly, we come to know that his addiction stemmed from his self-hate, as he holds himself responsible for the death of Nanbu, which happens in the intermediary years between Seasons 1 and 2. Another major development that takes place in Season 2 is Joe dropping his previous stage name to embrace his new name, Nomad. Having gotten over the heydays of his youthful pursuits, the new and mature Joe decided to offer a name that would suit his current lifestyle as a nomadic fighter. Interestingly, this is to an extent a throwback to his own youth when he would take his bike and go from place to place so that he could find a desolate spot for his shadow practice sessions. Now, coming to the use of gear, Nomad witnesses Joe using 2 different gears throughout the second season. The first few episodes depict Joe using the standard Megalonia gear machinery to take part in the underground fights. However, he reverts back to his persona as gearless Joe as he takes part in the new edition of Megalonia for the second time. In this season, however, fans discovered a new favorite character in the guise of Chief, a contender for the first place in the tournament. Having been inspired by Gearless Joe to be able to dream big to become the greatest, Chief was able to fulfill his aspirations with a unique hummingbird gear that is later bestowed upon Joe after the former's demise. Chief's gear is one of the most path-breaking gear models to have appeared in the entire series. Its ability to boost the user's base strength is simply astounding. Seen in his face-off against Maruyama, Chief took his opponent down in an effortless fashion with just 1 punch. Moreover, the first battle against Nomad in the early part of Season 2 clearly highlights the sheer brutality Chief's gear is capable of unleashing when used properly. We see this gear at work for the final time in the final episode of the second season as Joe dons the Hummingbird gear to fight Mac in the finale. Here we see a sudden boost in the new gear's agility as Joe appears to be in ease while landing blows on Mac without the need to defend himself for a prolonged period of time. Beside the gear's superior force and impact, it must be taken into consideration that its function is entirely supplementary in nature. That is, it only enhances the user's abilities as a fighter. Hence, Joe donning Chief's gear not only helped him to boost his own power, but also provided him the strength to become a better version of himself. Still, it does not change the fact that Joe did not fall from grace with the passage of time. If Season 1 was the story of how an underdog rose to fame, Season 2 only depicted the flip side of his success. So how is his destiny going to be? What is Joe's legacy as a fighter? Season 1 ended with Team Nowhere establishing itself as a formal boxing unit, while Season 2 made a huge leap thereon, from success to downfall and then redemption. Megalobox sees a wonderful cast of characters that change in the course of the series to become someone better, and this includes Joe as well. Having left Gym Nowhere in the past to ignite his painkiller addiction, Joe's nomadic lifestyle ultimately led him back to his own roots to rediscover the strength that lies in him to move ahead in life. This was further strengthened by Chief's endeavors to safeguard his community at all costs. His hope to see his homeland, to return to his home, back to his departed wife and son, this culminated in feelings of serenity and faith in one's own self. Hence, Joe's legacy seems to be the sort of that would eventually pave a better path not only for himself but also for those around him. Marvelous verdict. To conclude, Junk Dog Joe's anatomy is not really that freakish when judged from the outset. It is what lies underneath that is feared immensely by those who share the ring with him. With gear or without, Joe's style of fighting would certainly remind you of a wild creature, one that is guided by his instinct and armed with the sharpest reflexes to outlast his rivals in the most unconventional ways possible. The insane adrenaline rush that goes in tandem with his never-ceasing levels of endurance makes Joe one of the most formidable fighters in the world of Megalobox.